A month ago, a mass shooting in California by a disturbed young man, Elliot Rodger, grabbed America's attention. One of the 6 students killed was 20-year-old Christopher Martinez. His grieving father, Richard, in the wake of his own unimaginable personal loss, made a rousing call for change in the gun laws, venting his anger against politicians and the gun lobby, whom he blamed for his son's death. I've been speaking with Mr. Martinez, but first, our Washington correspondent Kylie Morris reports on the latest fierce and passionate chapter in the campaign to change America's gun laws.
This week, Liberty City, Miami. A 20-year-old man and a teenage girl shot dead. Police describe multiple others wounded. What you can't hear is the woman in red calling out, "My baby didn't deserve this." America's cataclysmic addiction to guns makes mourners of mothers and fathers every day.
Lost and broken.
A month ago, it was Richard Martinez, enraged by the murder of his son, Christopher.
Chris died because of craven, irresponsible politicians and the NRA. They talk about gun rights. What about Chris's right to live? When will this insanity stop? When will enough people say, "Stop this madness. We don't have to live like this. Too many have died." We should say to ourselves, not one more. Thank you. That's it.
20-year-old Christopher Martinez was one of 6 students murdered by Elliot Rodger at Isla Vista. Prior to Rodger's shooting and knifing attacks close to the Santa Barbara campus of the University of California, he'd posted threats online.
"I will punish all of you for it."
Since the deaths of their sons, both fathers, Peter Rodger and Richard Martinez, have met and spoken.
Too many people have died.
Mr. Martinez has launched his own vociferous campaign for immediate action to prevent gun violence, in memory of his son, who, after an all-American upbringing, was due this September to begin a year's study in one of his favourite cities, at Queen Mary University in London.
Well, I asked Richard Martinez if he's confident now about taking on the gun lobby.
I have no illusions about how tough this fight's going to be. They have fought, the NRA and the other people that oppose gun legislation are pretty tough, and they put a lot of money into these things. They have all these gun manufacturers that are making tremendous profits, and there's that to deal with. So I want all the support I can possibly get.
I tell you what is perplexing is that you are a criminal lawyer. You're somebody who understands what's been going on in American society down the years. And I'm not in any way trying to diminish what you're doing, which is wonderful, no question. But why haven't you and all the people around you in the legal profession not stood up as one and said this has to stop long ago?
You're right. I mean, it's absolutely appalling. I sit here today and I think, why didn't I pay attention when those parents at Sandy Hook, who lost all these little children, were suffering? Why in the world didn't I do something? The situation it's outrageous. It just is beyond belief. And I got to tell you, I was in the memorial service for my son in a rehearsal. I get a text from a reporter that I'd done an interview with earlier to tell me that there's a shooting in Seattle. I couldn't stay there. I was upset, I was angry. It happened that there was a TV station studio right across the street. I walked in, I said, "My name is Richard Martinez, my son was shot at Isla Vista, get a camera crew. I've got something to say about the situation in Seattle." I was on the air and I said, people in the American media need to take a stand right now, this minute, and decide whether you're going to be part of the problem or part of the solution. The problem that the media has and the decision that they have to make is whether they're going to use the name of the perpetrator, use the things that they write, use the videos that the perpetrator did in the media. In these kinds of situations, the perpetrator knows they're going to die. But what the perpetrator wants is for everybody in the world to know how terribly they all treated him.
The oxygen of publicity.
When the media does that, they complete the perpetrator's plan. They give the perpetrator what they want, because at the very moment when it's being broadcast, there's somebody out there at that very moment watching that show and thinking, that looks to me like a good way to go.
With respect, that is one end of the equation, and clearly there are all sorts of facets of society that can play in this issue. But by far the biggest is to tackle the problem at the source. And the problem, as you identified on that grievous, terrible moment when you had to cope with your son's death and you spoke to the media, was not one more, was your phrase.
Not one more.
Let me just be clear, John. Gun violence is a multifaceted problem. It's a problem of mental health, and it's a problem of too many guns, and it's a problem of the media. So my statement of not one more refers to not one more needless death from this kind of a thing. And, you know, I grew up in the 50s and 60s in this country. People had guns then. They defended their homes with guns. They hunted with guns. But we didn't have these kinds of mass killings with the frequency that you're seeing now. But I grew up on a farm. I had a gun. A gun, in my mind, is a tool. But you know, you don't need 3 guns, and you don't need 400 rounds of ammunition.
Well, let me just ask you about the meeting you had with Peter Roger, who was the father of the boy who killed your boy.
John, as bad as my situation is, that family's is worse. I go down the street, people have condolences, you offered your condolences to me. Nobody does that for them. You know, they lost a son that they loved. You know, I mean, they feel badly. I mean, you put yourself in their place. They're horrified by what happened.
The grief that you feel is very evidently channeled through an enormous anger and determination. But at some point, presumably, you have to come to terms with your grief, and then can you still be angry and yet recognize that you've got to move on from his death?
My occupation, you fight. That's what we get paid for, is to, you know, you get up there in the courtroom and you fight till somebody tells you to stop. I've been doing that for the past 30 years. You know, my son was the gentlest, kindest, funniest kid until he was in a competitive sports situation. In a competitive sports situation, he would clobber you. He was ferocious. Well, he got that from someplace. That's his parents. And I realized I have to make some meaning out of my son's death. He was such a terrific kid with so much potential, and it's such a waste.
But thank you very, very much indeed for joining us. And I'm really, really grateful, and best of luck.
You're welcome. And anytime you want to talk, on this issue, I'll talk for the rest of my life if I have to get it done, so not a problem.